we're small in numbers, but I see we're top-heavy in brains. So I'll be afraid of the question period. Originally, I was going to talk about post-secular society and contemporary religious war. A bit more of a sexy subject, but it's just something I'm working on, and parts of it are still in the shaggy dog story stage. So I thought I would talk about my adventures in the Bertrand Russell editorial project. Then I suddenly remembered the last time I went to the States to a conference to give a talk on Russell, the fellow at the border, the immigration person said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to an academic conference." He says, "And what are you talking on?" I said, "Bertrand Russell." He said, "Who's he?" I said, How are the mighty fallen?" And at the time that we got the archives, Russell was far better known than what Chomsky is now. And he was a major figure, as I'll show you. So what I'm going to do is tell you something about the Russell editorial project, how it came here, how I got to it, and then a few ideas about Russell. And then about midnight we'll go home. All right. I noticed some panic-stricken faces. All right. Now, if you go to the Mills Library, just across the borrowing desk, you go downstairs, you come to one of these lovely rare book rooms. And in one of the side rooms, there's another room by itself that has a desk, a little statue of Bertrand Russell, and then a whole batch of books. These are all the books from Bertrand Russell's library. I've leafed through them, and some of the books he has his own writings. And the most frequent word that I saw was rubbish. So you go there. So then, next door, there is another batch of books, which are the books that Bertrand Russell himself wrote, translated in every language on earth. And there are Russell volumes that we ourselves, I should have brought one of the volumes that we ourselves produced. And behind that, in another archive, there are papers after papers after papers, including 30,000 letters, drafts of books, files of articles that he wrote by the thousands. And those of us that try to eke through a memo or a letter of recommendation for a day are astounded at the sheer volume of the productivity. I have said, and I would say again, that if somebody followed me around with a tape recorder, who wasn't a psychiatrist, and took down everything I'd said and then wrote it up, I don't think I could match the productivity of Russell. We figured for the 97 years of his life, he wrote 3,000 words a day of superb prose. Now, the letters are very, very elaborate emails, because in those days when you corresponded in Paris or London, any major European city, there are about 4 mail deliveries a day. So you get letters, and then the same day an answer, then the same day an answer back. So you have something, the only thing that matches that now is email, with the difference that our emails are, do you have your collected emails? You usually have to keep them in case if you're Bernard Madoff or something like that, because they go to trials. So it is a staggering collection. And to give you some idea of how it goes, the year that I left, which was 2006, we had received a whole batch of letters from the government of Vietnam, Russell's correspondence with them. So there's correspondence with every major intellectual figure in here. There's correspondence with George Bernard Shaw, there's correspondence with T.S. Eliot, there's correspondence with D.H. Lawrence, plus all his various lovers, correspondence with them. But there's also correspondence with major world leaders. They always answered it, especially in the last 20 years of his life. So I remember once the Egyptian consul came to McMaster, I said I would show him the letters between Bertrand Russell and Nasser, who was then the president of Egypt. Then the Israeli came, I showed him the letters between Russell and Ben Gurion. So what's the summation? Is that you have an almost unbelievable record of the politics and intellectual life of the 20th century, insofar as it centered on England. Now, how did McMaster, this was asked me a couple of weeks ago, we had a famous American sociologist was here, Nathan Glaser, giving a talk somewhere. So I was speaking to him after at some party. He said, how the hell did this place get the Bertrand Russell letters? I said, what do you mean by this place? Well, it's a Commonwealth University. Surely Harvard wanted them. Surely other universities wanted them. The answer is they did. Now, how did it happen that we got the Bertrand Russell archives? And let me tell you, in the 1960s and 1970s, McMaster was known to the world by medical school and the Russell collection. So that's how the mighty have fallen, because now so many people haven't heard of Russell. So we had here a very colorful librarian whose dress was even shabbier than mine. In fact, I sort of felt like Fred Astaire every time I went to see him. He was a colorful man, and I was asking about his life story, he was a literary man, how did he become a librarian? So he said, well, I grew up very poor, so I wanted to go into some field where I could rise immediately to the top. So I went to library school. Why? All the other students were women. That's what the world was like at that time. But his great love was archives, going around the world collecting archives. So in the 1960s, Bertrand Russell had convened a war crimes tribunal against the President of the United States, and he needed money. So he decided to sell all of his papers. Now, the first people who wanted it was the University of Texas, not an impoverished place. I should say, by the way, in those days, money was everywhere. These papers cost at that time around $700,000, which is about $3 million now, the whole collection. So University of Texas was looking at them. Then somebody reminded them that Russell wanted the money to continue with his war crimes tribunal against Lyndon Johnson, who was the most famous Texan of the time and President of the United States. So that deal fell through. And then MIT, a consortium which included MIT, but I'm not sure which other university wanted it, made an offer, then they withdrew. I'm not sure exactly why. There was Reedy's bid from McMaster University. He had a good deal of money, but nothing like $700,000. So his bid was accepted. He brought it here. A number of foundations contributed. I don't think you know them, the Atkinson Foundation and so on. And the material was about to come here. Boxes and boxes, and it was already very well organized.